Well, welcome everybody to the August 19th Rotary Club of Newport's meeting. If Julie, would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go ahead and say hi to the folks in the room and hi to the folks on Zoom. It's kind of like what I expected. I thought that there would probably be a relatively low turnout with some of the recent numbers from COVID, and that certainly seems to be of concern, especially in my household. So I wanted to share a few of those things. But first, are there, Mark is our greeter. Are there any visiting Rotarians?
No, there are not.
All right. Well, any visiting Rotarians on Zoom? Don't see any hands raised there. How about guests? And from the different tables, it's hard for me to see who's at which table, but if you would like to introduce your guest, if you've brought one.
I'll just stand up. This is weird too, talking to a screen, so I'm not sure how to do this. I have a guest today, and his name is Riley Johnson, and he is our new financial advisor for Columbia Bank, which he'll be covering from Tillamook to Walport, and he's housed in Newport. He came via Minnesota to Redmond to now to Newport because his fiance got a job with the hospital in Lincoln City. So we're happy to have him, and he comes via Ed Jones to Columbia Bank, right?
Yep,
Did I miss anything?
No, yeah, that's pretty.
He has a Minnesotan accent. So, welcome.
Any other guests in the room?
I have a guest, Richard, online, our speaker, Angee, which I'll introduce in a minute, and also our colleague and her colleague, Doug Brusa from the Oregon State University Foundation.
Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome. Drop my notes. So again, I'd like to share real quickly kind of the change in my position here. So recently had a little family get together, ended up getting a little sick, a little cold from that. And then we had some house guests this week and had a little COVID scare. Our house guests recently tested negative, so feel a little bit better about that, but I felt it best just to do this and then also to detail or talk about some of the events with Rotary and particularly we recently have had news that the Central Oregon celebration was canceled, that the four-way test finalist that was canceled, and we still know that our district governor visit is still pending and hasn't been finalized. So I think that probably remains to be seen. So certainly some erring on the side of caution there, particularly the Delta variant, and I know that seems to be in the news and especially how, and I'm not a medical expert, but just reading a lot of those different news stories and about how it's a person that's vaccinated can carry the same viral load as a person unvaccinated, and it just doesn't discriminate. So kids, older people, all in the same group in that case. So certainly warrants being more cautious. And what I would strongly recommend, and I can see from the attendance today in person, I think it's warranted that we go to all Zoom for at least a month. And I'd like to have you think about that. I'll ask that again at the end of the meeting here and see if we can get a final word. But I think that would probably be the best, being that it looks like we've got more folks on Zoom than we do in the room. And so, again, I'll throw that question out again here. So any announcements, any announcements from the crowd or anybody that wants to comment on that? Anybody on Zoom that want to give any comments about that? Keith, go ahead.
Well, Richard, I just got my booster shot yesterday, but I'd been to both my pulmonary rehab people here, or not pulmonary tech for all my pulmonary tests here at the hospital in Newport. The tech has to work the third floor where the patients are. They're not encouraged. It's really sad. Well, and here she said 100% of what they're seeing is unvaccinated. Then my two doctors up at OHSU, one just came off the floor to have a virtual meeting with me, and OHSU is so slammed, they're not able to get other patients in or do anything. And again, my pulmonologist up there said 100% of the patients that are coming in that are really sick, unvaccinated. So he recommended I get a vaccination. Believe it or not, yesterday I was going to get some M&Ms and I thought I'd stop back at the pharmacy and see when they're going to do it. And he said, well, we can do it right now. So I pulled up my shirt and got a shot. So I think it's really treacherous out there right now.
Agreed. Thanks for commenting there. I had sent out a question or two through via P-mail, and I know that oftentimes will get sent right to the spam folder. So if periodically check that, if we correspond, about Rotary, it may come in there, or again, I'd like to send a question about, how you feel or what's going on or those kinds of things. But any other comments on that, or any other member announcements, anything going on there? So I know Sylvia's got a event coming this weekend. So Sylvia, would you like to talk just a little bit about that and what that looks like?
Sure. Is my mic on? Can you hear me now? All right. There's a community services cleanup project. We're actually going to move to Literacy Park. It's a lot bigger, and we can kind of compartmentalize. There's ivy that needs to be pulled off the trees that's way down in the canyon. There's back hedges that need trimming and some weeding in that area, and some around the library. So if you're looking for a chance to do a Rotary project and not be, we'll all be outside. If you want to wear a mask, I'm sure no one will fault you for that. I don't know that it will be specifically necessary because we will be spaced. I expect people to operate in their family groups, but let your conscience be your guide on that one. Bring your shovels and your little 3-prong rakes and some gloves. We'll have some garbage bags. And Anita from the Parks Department will be there to help and coordinate. So if you have any questions on that, come see me. And if by a vote everyone says, hey, let's just mask up, I think we'll all be fine with that too. What time can we? 10 o'clock Saturday, 10 to noon, we'll be done by lunch is the idea. And I don't even know if it'll take quite that long. Initially, Anita looked at the huge canyon that's full of invasives, and I said, nah, we ain't doing that. But it turns out, the bridge itself that crosses the little meadow needs help. There's lots of little areas in a very large park where we can meet. We're also doing the collection for Grace Wins. There are 5 businesses now where you can leave things. Columbia Bank with Julie, and then West Coast Bank by the Embarcadero with Patty, with Freddie at Advantage, with at Martech with Doretta, and I believe Lola volunteered over at Samaritan House. So a lot of different opportunities there. So they're looking for paper plates, cups, toilet paper, paper towels. Good luck. Don't go to the biggest store in town. Shelves were empty last I looked. Stuff for boxed lunches, individual drinks, drink boxes, beverages, granola bars, heat cups, things like that. And on the bigger side, tents, tarps, sleeping bags. So that's another collection. You can leave things off at those businesses and not worry about coming into one particular large meeting. So that's it for the upcoming projects. We've got some things that are also going to be collections slated on for next month, including in September. We'll participate on Beach Cleanup Day, but we're going to probably focus on the bay. And then in October, we'll be assisting with the cancer walk to help that aspect. So any questions on those? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next part, Richard.
Sylvia, I know, go ahead. Yeah. I know that you had, we're going to do our history minute. Are you prepared to go right into that and do our historical minute?
I am indeed. I even sent a sheet of paper here well in advance. So Diane asked that each committee member also talk about their committees and the history of it. And so I got on the website and I thought it'd be really easy to look up when the Community Service Committee started. Well, I can tell you the biggest problem about the Community Service Committee is you all don't realize you're on it. It isn't, and I'll explain more about that because we all know in 1905, Paul Harris started Rotary. Well, why didn't it just disappear as another lunch bunch? Why are we still talking about it? You know, 110 years later, 115 years later. Well, in 1906, they decided they didn't just want to be a lunch bunch. They came up with 3 priorities, and they were to promote their business interests, to promote good fellowship, and advancement of the best interests of the community. And when they looked at best interests of the community, they looked at it from, how does my business serve the community? Is my paving company meaning less potholes? Is my financial institution meaning a stronger financial company? Is your grocery store getting people the things they need? And very quickly that progressed. In 1910 in Chicago at the first Rotary convention, somebody had said that one profits most who serves his fellows best. And then that was Arthur Sheldon. And he also added, business is the science of human service. So he wasn't thinking about it in terms of some altruistic thing for non-Rotarians. He approached it from the business side. My business is going to do better, and I will stand out if I serve my customers and the community better. And just the next year later, in 1911, in this little town called Portland, Oregon, there was the second Rotary convention, and they adopted the slogan of serving another. And then in a nice little foray off onto the Columbia, somebody had asked, how do we best get a Rotary group started? And he was told, well, service above self. So both of those things were actually started and adopted in Portland in 1911. So then I thought, okay, well, when was the first committee, the first community service committee? And I went to the history section and I went to the structure section. And all it said is our structure is clubs, Rotary International, and the Rotary Foundation. And if you go to clubs, it does not talk about committees. So you look at communities of sections of service. Well, there they break down service above self into 4 different sections. They looked at club service, vocational service, community service, and international service. And at that point, people started looking at different sections of service, and a committee was born. But of course, the problem is, now we have people who say, oh, I'm not on that committee. Whereas the whole foundation of Rotary is based on your business and your community will thrive if you help the community. You can't have a successful business in a floundering community unless maybe you're the undertaker or the moving company. So let's look on the positive side and roll up our sleeves to see where you can help, not just how your business can serve the community, but also join in these high visibility projects. At Literacy Park, there's actually a rose garden. I put it in quotes because there's 2.1 struggling rose bushes being choked out by weeds and crocosmia. And there is a little plaque saying, in memory of a Rotarian. Anybody know who that little rose garden is in memory of? It's not Dick Fowler. I didn't recognize it. They'll have to come on Saturday and find out. So hope to see you there. You know, we can wear masks. We've got lots of distancing to do. And bring your tools. It'll be a great bonding experience in a nice, safe environment. Thank you.
Thanks for that report, Sylvia, and thank you for Diane for coordinating that. I think that's wonderful. We all get to learn a little bit, and we all get to have a little bit more insight or a little bit better understanding of Rotary, whether, you know, whatever sector it may be that we're pulling apart and hearing a little bit about. So I think that's very valuable. So thank you, Diane, for kind of leading it up. I know you said last week that you're basically resigning, but we're going to keep you doing it. You're doing a great job. So no, no resigning. So next up, I know we don't have Bob in the room. I understand he had a conflict and couldn't make it. Is there anybody that would like to fill in just for a few minutes for Bob as Sergeant in Arms? Okay, well, how about self-monitoring? Any happy bucks? We'll just call it out and we'll have, I think Keith is recording those numbers, but any happy bucks here?
I'm happy.
Oh, Marcia, let's hear it.
Well, I'm very, very, very proud of my daughter, Sharon Mary Buckley Wheeler. Here's what happened. She's volunteered at the aquarium for 3 years. She worked summers up at Yaquina Head, and she loves marine biology. And she was asked to give a presentation to Senator Merkley yesterday at the aquarium and about plastics in the ocean. And he fist bumped her at the end, and she was so happy. And I am so proud of her. $25 happy.
Wonderful. Good job. Any other happy bucks? Go ahead, Amy. Go ahead.
Amy or Megan?
Megan, sorry, I thought I heard Amy's voice.
I'm $28 happy because we got 28 more people vaccinated on Sunday in Toledo. So most of them were first doses. There was about 3 second doses, and we had about 20 people on a list that wanted their boosters. So it's still, our efforts are still happening, and just tell everybody where you can find one. So there you go.
Wonderful. Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.
Any others out there? Okay, any sad bucks or any other reason, any just sheer foundation donations? Okay, well, we'll move on. We'll wrap up, and I think we've got a few bucks for Bob's efforts, so very good. Next, I'd like to invite Diane to introduce our program. So go ahead and take it away, Diane.
Thank you, Richard. I am pleased to introduce our speaker today, Angee Doerr. She leads the Oregon Sea Grant for Oregon State University. She's been with Sea Grant, Oregon Sea Grant, and Oregon State University since April 2019. Prior to that, she was at the Stanford Center for Ocean Solutions. And prior to that, she was a Senate Policy Fellow for the California Council for Science and Technology. She is a veteran, serving as a naval flight officer from 2002 to 2009, and is still in the U.S. Naval Reserves. She earned her PhD at the University of California, Davis with ecology. She's a scuba diver. She likes hiking, reading, running, and wine tasting. She's married and has a menagerie of pets. She lives in Glen Eden Beach, Oregon, and works at the Extension Office here on the Bay Road in Newport. And she only came to Newport 11 months before life shut down with COVID. So she'd love to hear about all of the local activities, restaurants, and so on and so forth. Please help me welcome Angee Doerr.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. And so, Diane, would you like me to go ahead and start sharing? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give my presentation. So thank you for the very warm welcome. I am excited to be here with everyone today. You should all see the presentation now, but if you can't, okay, I'm seeing a thumbs up. Perfect. So let me actually move my mouse up there as well so that it knows when I'm clicking. And I'm going to walk you through Diane did an excellent job of introducing me, but just a very brief background about myself. And then I'll talk to you about what I'm doing here in Oregon with Oregon State University and Oregon Sea Grant. So as mentioned, I got my undergraduate degree a very long time ago now. I was just reminded that my 20-year college reunion is coming up, which seems physically impossible, but apparently it's true. So I got my degree from Duke University, where I got a bachelor's of science in environmental science. I've always been a huge fan of science, liked it a lot. But I went to Duke on a military scholarship, which meant that when I graduated, I had to join the Navy. I went to flight school, which was a lot of fun. I actually really enjoyed my active duty time in the Navy. But while I was on one of my shore assignments, I had the opportunity through my active duty command to get a master's of business administration. They had an educational grant, and they were basically asking anyone, who wanted to get an MBA, they would give us the funding to do so. And not one ever turned down an opportunity, especially one such as that. I decided to do it. I studied entrepreneurship, and then for my master's thesis / business plan, I worked on ecotourism. It was a lot of fun to do, and it really made me realize that I missed learning. And I was at a point in my Navy career where my commitment was up. I could either stay on active duty and continue on to do a whole career, or I could get out and do something new. And so I decided to make a compromise with myself. I decided to apply to some graduate schools to get a PhD. And if I got in, I would do that. And if I didn't, no harm, no foul. My Navy career was going well, and I could stay in the Navy. And I ended up getting into my top choice, which was University of California, Davis. The reason I wanted to go to UC Davis because I wanted to study ecology, and they have a really, really fantastic ecology program. More so than that, they are one of the few, well, they were one of the few schools that allowed you to do interdisciplinary research for a PhD. It's much more common now, but when I was getting my PhD 10 years ago, it was still pretty uncommon. And so for my research, I studied the spiny lobster fishery in the Bahamas, which was a pretty fantastic deal because it meant I got to spend all my research time scuba diving in the Bahamas and hanging out with fishermen and studying this little guy, the spiny lobster. The reason I was studying the spiny lobster is because it's the most important commercial fishery in the Bahamas. And on a lot of the outlying family islands, it's really the only source of income, the only source of livelihood on a lot of these islands. They're not tourist destinations, there's no industry. The people really are commercial fishing families. And the spiny lobster population in the Bahamas is healthy, but they wanted to make sure, the government wanted to make sure it stayed healthy. They were applying for MSC certification, Marine Stewardship Council certification. They needed to do this in order to continue to export to Europe, which was requiring it. It's a very lengthy and expensive process. And so they really wanted to make sure they had all the science necessary. And so I was working with the government and with the fishermen to better understand the fishing fleet and behaviors and the health of the lobster population so they could continue to maintain it. And I wanted to make sure that whatever policies were put into place, we're protecting the environment, but we're also protecting the livelihoods of these people that were so completely dependent on this fishery. And so I did all my research, I wrote up my reports, I came up with some policy solutions, handed them off, and then realized I didn't actually understand what happened after that. To me, as a scientist, once my research was done, everything after that was kind of this black box. And I wanted to better understand how science was used for policy. And so I had the opportunity to apply. Well, I applied for a couple of different fellowships that I ended up getting. And I had the opportunity to either go to DC and do the Canals Fellowship, which is a marine science fellowship, or stay in California and do the California Council on Science and Technology Policy Fellowship. And after a lot of internal debating and talking it over, I decided to stay in California for a couple of reasons. One, this was going into fall of 2015, and the government in DC was pretty dysfunctional. It's still pretty dysfunctional. And I really wanted to work for a government that was at least relatively functioning so that I could understand how it worked when it worked the way it was supposed to. The other really nice thing about CCST is they're small cohorts. It's extremely hands-on, and we are guaranteed a position within the legislative branch. And that's really what I wanted. I wanted to understand how the legislative branch makes laws using science. And so I spent a year as a policy fellow with California's Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Water. The chair of that committee was Senator Fran Pavley, who was an ocean champion, and I also worked as a legislative aide in her office. And so I got, very hands-on, daily hands-on experience working both on the in a personal office side, working with and for Senator Fran Pavley, and then on the committee side, working with the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Water. And I learned a ton. I actually really enjoyed my time at the Capitol, but I learned, much to my chagrin, that science is actually not really used in the policy process. It's extremely difficult for your average legislator or committee member to even access the science, nor do they have time to really dive deep into it. And so that I learned that as a scientist, if I want the work I'm doing to be used, I have to make it accessible, and I have to make sure that the research is available to the legislators and committee members when they need it, as opposed to just kind of out there behind paywalls. And so to continue to better understand how to link science and policy, I really wanted an interdisciplinary position somewhere. And I've spent my entire life being fortunate and finding the right position at the right time. And that happened again. Stanford's Center for Ocean Solutions, which is a boundary organization. It's essentially, it's a university-based organization that works on kind of linking knowledge to action, helping to develop policies for difficult or intractable ocean issues. And they were hiring a research scientist focused on coupled human natural systems, which is what I had done for my whole career and what I continue to do now. And I really enjoyed my time at Stanford. I was there for about 3.5 years as a research scientist. I got to work on issues like climate change and how climate was affecting small scale fisheries. I got to work on ocean data and how we could use all this really cool technology that's out there these days, unmanned underwater drones and satellite dishes and airplanes and all this technology we have in the ocean, how we could use it to better understand how the ocean was changing. One of my favorite projects is I got to work with the government of Palau. They recently implemented a marine protected area, marine reserve that covers 80% of their EEZ. It was a huge project, a huge undertaking, and Center for Ocean Solutions got to help design the implementation plan as well as the research plan to continue to track how it's working and what might need to be changed over time. And so I did get to do some fun work. Occasionally I got to do hands-on work, but I found that most of my life was me sitting in front of a computer. And that was not why I had gotten into science, and it certainly wasn't why I had chosen to study marine system fisheries. And so I realized that it was not really quite what I wanted to do, and I wanted something more hands-on. So I started again looking for positions, trying to figure out what was out there. And lo and behold, this new position opened up that I'd never even heard of before. And it was an assistant professor of practice. I'd never heard of an assistant professor of practice, but it sounded like a really neat job, and it sounded like it really was exactly what I was looking for. I got to bring together all of my research interests. I got to do research, I got to do outreach, I got to work with the community again. And so I applied, and I think my interest and my enthusiasm really came through, and I was lucky enough to get this position. So as mentioned, I moved up here to Oregon in April 2019. My official title is very long, which is why I like to put on there, but I'm an assistant professor of practice, and I'm the commercial fisheries and marine resources community educator. And so this is very much a dual-hatted position. I work for Oregon Sea Grant. I have an academic home with Oregon State University. I'm an academic faculty member with the Department of Fisheries, Wildlife and Conservation Science. They just changed their name from Fisheries and Wildlife to Fisheries, Wildlife and Conservation Science. And I'm also obviously part of Oregon State University Extension Service, which is why I'm here in the Extension Building right down the street from those of you at the Elks Club, right here on Southeast Bay, looking out actually at the water right now. I'm in my office. So right down the street here, and I get to do a lot of really cool things. So as part of my position, I get to do research, which is fun for me. I am a scientist and I really do like to do research, but I also get to do a lot of outreach and working with a lot of different groups. So one thing that I'm interested in right now, and that I've always been interested in, is helping fishing communities adapt to change, whether that's environmental change or policy change, or typically the combination of both. Something that's happening off the waters, to the waters off the west coast here is climate change. It's affecting our oceans, not as rapidly as it's affecting the East Coast, which is fortunate for us. And that's because we have very different ocean systems, deeper water, upwelling. But we are seeing it, and we're starting to see the impacts. I have a picture of a market squid here because I think market squid are beautiful, but also because it's an example of how our oceans are changing. We've had market squid occur off the coast of Oregon periodically, usually following El Nino events in the past, but we've had them consistently off the coast for the last 5-6 years, to the point where Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife is now looking at making them a managed species off the coast, which is a pretty dramatic change in a pretty short period of time. So, we are definitely seeing changes affecting our fishing fleets, and part of my job is to understand what changes might be coming, so that I can work with researchers and the fishing fleet and decision makers to be proactive, to get ahead of the change, to come up with new policies so that we can actually protect our fishing communities rather than trying to respond to things that have happened after the fact. Wrong way. I also work quite a bit with community members. And so that's a lot of fun for me. It's one of the reasons I took this job. I work with youth. I'll lead tours for summer camps. I'll teach classes as part of Sea Grant's K-12 educational program. I work with faculty members to teach undergrads things about marine policy and Oregon fisheries. I run Shop at the Dock, which is a very popular program that my predecessor started and I've continued. And we get community members and tours from all over. We have people that come down from Montana or Idaho that are here in town and had heard from friends that they should check out Shop at the Dock. And so we get people really from all over. It's a lot of fun for me to teach people about our Oregon fisheries and why they are so special and sustainable, and why people should be eating Oregon seafood. I also work quite a bit with the fishing community. I teach a fisherman first aid and safety training course that's based off of wilderness first aid. I had to get instructor certified and go through a 2-week wilderness first responder course where I had to learn how to basically address medical issues in the wild. The idea behind wilderness first aid and then behind the FAST course, fisherman first aid and safety training, we call it FAST. But the idea behind it is that a typical first aid class will teach you to, how to give someone CPR for 3 minutes while you're waiting for first responders to show up, knowing that the emergency responders are never more than a couple of minutes away. And if you're on a boat and you are hundreds of miles from shore, you may be hours, if not days, from help. Coast Guard, might be able to get to you in a timely manner, and you need to know how to respond to injuries on the vessel. And so I teach this course to our fishing fleets all along the coast of Oregon, and I've taught it a couple times up in Washington as well. The first day is in person in a classroom where we go over all the basics. We do skills training. And then the second day, we do scenarios out on the vessel. And that's really my favorite part, because when you're out on a vessel, you really get reminded of how small these spaces are. You get reminded of, how many obstacles and challenges and gear and stuff there is on the boat. You're trying to work around these issues. You're trying to carry someone who, in this scenario, there was a big wave and they fell in this tight confined space, and you don't know if they injured their back, so you don't want to move them around too much. So you're trying to carry them without too much shaking, too much moving of their back or their head. Oftentimes the weather plays along. And so as you can see, or maybe you can't see, it's raining here. It's a very cold day. It's a very wet day. It's December, it's raining. And that's pretty typical for how it might be out on the boat as well. So we try to really get people out in the elements and have them practice the skills. I am also filling in as the Oregon Sea Grant aquaculture specialist because we don't actually currently have an aquaculture specialist. We're in the process of hiring someone or trying to hire someone when budget cuts due to COVID shut down all Oregon State University searches. And so it's important enough to me that I am filling it. Hopefully we'll be hiring someone in the near future, but in the meantime, it's me. And whenever I say aquaculture, especially as someone who works with the fishing community, people get pretty nervous. So I will just reassure everyone that when I say coastal aquaculture, we are talking specifically about oysters. We're talking about seaweed such as dulse, which is what I have a picture of. It's a popular new seaweed that people are growing. We're talking about purple urchin, possibly abalone. So really things happening right at the coast or in our estuaries. And most of the things that we are looking at growing are actually very, very good for the environment. They clean the water, they make our ecosystems more healthy. So it's a win-win. And I'm working with Oregon Aquaculture Association and Business Oregon and Oregon State University on a tool called the Oregon Explorer, Oregon Aquaculture Explorer. And it's a really, really neat one-of-a-kind tool that combines GIS data with financial planning to help people interested in aquaculture develop financial plans and site reports to better understand some of the costs and challenges associated with aquaculture in a given location. And it's used for inland aquaculture as well. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is I recently, as in it starts September 1st, but I recently found out I've received a grant funded by NOAA under the Young Fishermen Development Act. The whole United States has an issue right now called the graying of the fleet. The median age of our fishermen holders is getting older every year. And fewer younger people are getting into fishing or getting into aquaculture. And so we have a grant right now to develop a curriculum for workforce development to train people that are interested in fishing, how to get into it. It used to be you grew up in a fishing family and you went into fishing. The issue now is you have people that are interested in fishing. It's actually a very good income, above median income in most Oregon coastal communities. But if they didn't grow up in a fishing family, they have no way of getting into fishing. It's very hard to get on a boat if you've never been on a boat. So no one, if for insurance reasons, and no one wants to hire you. And so we are going to be developing a curriculum, working directly with Washington State and Washington Sea Grant to develop a regional training program for people that are interested in getting into commercial fishing that will cover everything from, boat safety, navigation, gear types, gear handling, marine species management policies, to really allow them to be hireable by fishing crews. And finally, as a highlight for Lincoln County Extension, here in the same building as me here in Lincoln, we have 4-H. They do things like the Lincoln County Fair. We have Food Hero and SNAP Ed and other food and nutritional programs. We have just literally this week started a new program where we're going to be letting people borrow pressure cookers. So if you've ever wanted to, or pressure canners, sorry. If you've ever wanted to can your own tuna or vegetables or something and you don't have the equipment at home, you now have the capability to borrow one from Oregon State University Extension. And I promised I would mention, we run the Master Gardener program and Small Farms program as well. And our person who runs this program, Pammy Monette, actually just left to start her own farm. And so we are going to be hiring someone to serve as an OSU Extension Specialist for small farms and Master Gardener. So if you know anyone who is interested, send them my way and I'll get them all the information. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
I certainly have a question, Angee. I remember watching a documentary about the spiny lobster, and tell me, does most of that community, do they free dive for those, or how do they actually harvest them?
Yeah, so a lot of them do, but most of what it's done is it's called hookah diving, and it's actually really funny. I've gotten to do it myself in my research dives. And most of the fishermen are on small boats, just little dinghies, and they have like a air compressor like you'd get at Home Depot. and they have a garden hose, a very long garden hose attached to it. And at the end of the garden hose is a little regulator that you keep in your mouth. And so you have one person on the boat, you know, steering, and the other person who's down in the water basically all day long. They're only about 20 feet down. And so it's just, you know, air from the surface that's being pumped down to them. And they're just down there kind of all day long collecting the lobster while the other person steers around. The funniest thing about that hook diving is I was down there once hook diving, doing some research, looking at the fishing, you know, areas and things like that. And I had been warned that one of the problems is if you're trying to stay in a single place too long, the boat above you will start circling and you run the risk of them cutting off the hose. And that actually happened on one of our dives where the boat went right over the hose and the blades cut through it. And so you're breathing just fine. And all of a sudden you're breathing nothing but water. And you're like, uh-oh, this is bad. And like I said, you're only 20 or 30 feet down, but you look up and the end of the hose is dangling somewhere in the water behind you. And you have to swim up and then they have to reattach everything. And so, but yeah, it's an interesting system.
That was what they were detailing. They were talking about some of those systems and how people would maybe go a little deeper, and pretty soon they may be suffering from the bends. And so that was something I thought was quite a risk with living down there or being that part of the economy. So good. Any other questions for Angee? Any from the room?
And I will say, I love giving dock tours. So if your group or anyone in this group, or if you have family in town and you're trying to figure out what to do with them, you know, you can always give me a call or send me an email, and I can always give a dock tour.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Angee, I'll just share that as Rotary, one of our passions is to eradicate polio. And so we're this close now. We may be set back a little bit more because of the recent events in Afghanistan, being they're one of the last two countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan. But as far as eradicating polio, so today we'd like to, in your name, vaccinate 50 children against polio. So for speaking today. So thank you very much. And we'll make sure that that gets handled for you. So appreciate you today. All right, so next up, let's have the secretary's report.
Thank you, President Richard. We have 22 Rotarians online and in the room and 3 guests. So it's a rather paltry attendance, but considering the uncertainty of the current time, it's understandable. And I actually have a question for Angee. How do you cook dulse? Because I tried roasting it and it was awful. I discovered agar.
Yeah, so you know, you've probably heard that it tastes like bacon. I'm not convinced, but that's what they say. But I have had it. I've had it grilled, and I've had it smoked. And then it's not bad as a topper or something. But most people I know that say it tastes like bacon will still, like, you know, roast it or smoke it and still, not roast it, so I grill it or smoke it and like put it on a hamburger. So, you know, but it actually is also really nice in sauces though, because it will give it some of that umami flavor in sauces. And so that's how I've used it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, do we have a 50-50 drawing award?
Okay, yes, we do. We actually had $65 in the 50-50 today. I think you guys must like the wheel because we seem to do a little bit better. So we're gonna do this online, just like in the total Zoom days. And the winner will get $33. So let me share my screen here. Brian Gardner, $33.
Good job, Brian. Okay, how about social media award, John? Any boycotts this week, or what do you have?
We are boycotting this week.
Okay. So last minute announcements. Any things we need to make sure and mention? Anything we need to rehash real quickly?
I'm unmuted, so we're live now.
Oh, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Coastbusters Walk that the Rotary is sponsoring. We are scheduled still to go for Saturday, October 9th. I would love to get a bunch of people from the Rotary who want to walk together. If you are interested in that, I guess reach out to me and we can get you registered. Anyone who registers for the walk by August 27th, it's only $25 to register. That ensures that you get a t-shirt. So, thank you.
Any other announcements?
Does the secretary have a membership incentive?
Jim, do you hear us?
Oh, busted. Membership incentive is $5. Howard Adams is not here, so it'll roll over to next week.
Very good, very good. Okay, well, as promised, I wanted to ask the question again. Should we go ahead and go Zoom at least or for the next month and then reassess? What does everybody think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sounds pretty unanimous, and that's what I've been getting back via email, and I see in the chat several indications to do that. So we'll have John send out a full Zoom link. We'll meet here this time next week, and we'll communicate and keep in touch with the Elks to make sure they know, ahead of time if we get back and have that comfort level or the count numbers go down, whatever metric we're going to utilize. But we certainly think that's a appropriate thing and to be more safe than sorry. So I sure appreciate your cooperation and agreement on that. Next week's meeting, Diane, do you have that schedule in front of you? Do you know who's up next week and greeters? Sorry.
Unmute.
I don't have the greeters, but the presentation is going to be from Spencer Nebel and the mayor. They will be talking about the Oregon food tax and other things that are going on in the city.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. I remember I wanted to mention that because the chamber is doing a virtual luncheon tomorrow, and you could preview that. You could actually get a little insight in what they're doing because they're presenting to the chamber virtually tomorrow. So if you'd like to hear about that and hear, what they say, maybe have some questions ahead of time or be prepared for next week, but just contact the chamber and they can get you that link and invite you to that. So thanks for reminding us on that, Diane. Okay, any other last minute announcements?
Out.
How about volunteer to lead us in the 5-way test? Hopefully someone from the room.
Jeff Allen would like to do that.
All right, Jeff, take it away. 5-way test.
Okay, that's right. The things we think, say, and do. Number one, is it the truth? 2, is it terrible?
Is it
Build
good and
all 5, is it fun?
is it?
See y'all next week.